Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Attilio out there, and Felicia out there. Hi to everybody out there. Hello to everybody in here. So this is our last class. I know, 5 weeks in summer goes super fast. So I want to start with some housework so that you're clear on what's coming up next week. Because we won't have a class next week, okay? So Sal and I will grade Comprehension Review 5 and 6 this week, okay? Your final 2 comprehension reviews, which are based on the 2 lectures that I'm giving this week, one I already did online and one I'm doing now, will be available tomorrow. And they're your last 2, okay? Your final week of class is August 7th through 10th, which is next week, okay? So your final exam that you'll be doing for the class will be available by noon on Sunday 6th in DocShare. And that's a take-home exam, meaning that you can spend all week on it. It's not an open exam, you have 2 hours close exam, okay? It's a take-home exam, which means you can use the materials around you. It is due by 7 p.m. on Thursday the 10th, okay? So it gives you a little bit of extra time on Thursday, but we have to grade them on Friday, so it's got to be done. It's got to be into me. We'll start grading on Thursday night. On that exam, because I promised Amanda Kay, there will be one additional clearly marked extra credit question that you can choose to do or not. And it will say, I am an extra credit question. If you want to try for extra credit, you can do me. If not, don't do me. Okay? And then all the other questions on the exam, I think they'll be will be, you must do them, right? There will just be one extra, clearly marked extra credit question. Okay? All right. Any questions about, this is obviously all in the PowerPoint, so for today, but is there any questions?
Yes, just one question, if I can.
Yes, Attilio.
So we will not meet for the next Tuesday, right?
No.
So
No.
We are not going to see each other anymore.
No.
For this class.
Well, you could do another class with us. Yeah.
Well,
we'd be delighted. Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, I wish I could. I don't know if I can do it.
Yes. This is indeed the last time that we'll all be together. Yeah.
Okay. No, sorry, because I was wondering if I have to do. If you remember, I asked you about the final exam, but now it's everything is clear. So okay. So this is
great.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, Attilio. Amanda Kay.
Man, I drive 10 hours and I feel sad.
Oh, we have been delighted to have you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome.
And we email ours, right?
Yes, you email yours, and online people put up theirs in DocShare. Okay. Yep. Okay. Right. So today we're going to finish up work on information structure. So that's I think for the first time you've had 2 lectures from me this week. Normally it's Sal that does the first online one and I do this one, but I did the first online one. How many of you got around to seeing that?
Thanks for the shout out.
Oh, you're very welcome, Amanda.
I took a screenshot. I'm going to start practicing memorizing this.
Okay.
This response. It is easier to memorize than Dr. Otardo's.
Yeah.
But it's still going to take some practice.
So we're going to do, I'm going to go over a little bit of that. We're going to do a teaching exercise on that. Then we're going to do a brief review of research methods. We're going to spotlight a study that we've talked about before on Japanese. And then you guys have to complete a class evaluation for me, okay? And everybody online, we would be, I don't think it doesn't force you to complete a class evaluation online anymore. It used to before you could get your grades. But obviously we'd be delighted, those people that are online, if you would complete the class evaluation, because this helps us to make this class better and fit better into what our students expect and want, okay? All right, so that's what we're going to do today. So the first thing I'm going to do, because a couple of people look like they might not have already watched Lecture 7, is this was my shout out to Amanda Kay from Grammarly. Can I borrow a pencil? I don't know. Can you? Yes, I might add that colloquial irregularities occur frequently in any language. Since you and the rest of our present company understood perfectly my intended meaning, being particular about the distinctions between can and may is purely pedantic and arguably pretentious. So Kay is going to memorize that one. Yeah, Amanda Kay is going to memorize that one. So yeah, but you'll probably lose all your friends. And, that's cool. The students will love you, the teachers will hate you, but you make your choice. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of this because obviously I'm hoping that most of you have seen it already. There's just a couple of things that I want to make sure that we understand in order to move to the exercise we're going to do. So, of course, every language has its own way of structuring information, and it's different across languages. How we highlight important versus unimportant but necessary information is different across languages. And the linguistic system that we use to do it varies across languages. For example, we talked about syntactic ways of changing information structure, right? So things like marked constructions, like it was Mary that John saw at the party, right? That's a marked construction. And that way we topicalize Mary, okay? But that's a marked construction. Or things like, oh, mushrooms I like, right? Again, you're topicalizing mushrooms. Now, in Chinese, this is a sort of standard way of presenting information, is having a topic and then a comment. In English, it's very unusual. These are unusual syntactic structures, but they're ways of changing information around. So we do it through syntax is one way. We also do it through lexis, through lexical things. For example, pronouns and articles. And we talked a little bit about this last week. I said this difference between going under a bridge, if you've never been to my house before. If I'm giving you directions to my house and I say you'll turn left and go under a bridge. But if I think you've been to my house before, I will say, you remember you'll turn left and then you'll go under the bridge, right? Because now I think you already, I know you know what that the bridge is there, okay? So I'm not, all this is in the lecture. Those of you that have done the lecture already, it's a 55-minute lecture, so I'm not going all through it again. But what we're going to do today is look at the ways in which, for the teaching exercise, phonology marks information structure, and it marks it by highlighting new information. So imagine A says, I need to borrow some money, okay? The stress, the prominence appears on money, right? That's the new information. B says, how much money, right? Because now the prominence shifts to much. You already know that you want money. The important information now is how much money do you want? And a good way to practice hearing that difference and deciding if you've got old or new information is doing a repetition of something like this. I need to borrow some money. How much money? Can you see how weird that sounds? I need to borrow some money. How much money? Right? So you know that there's a problem there with the phonology, with the prominence, because it should be, I need to borrow some money. How much money? Because the prominence moves to the new information. Okay? If it stays on the old information, which is this example here, I need to borrow some money. How much money? The reason it sounds weird is because it's the stress, the prominence is staying with the old information when it should have shifted to the new information, okay? So we also use tone choices, unit structure, and so on. For example, we are often told in EFL teaching, that WH questions go down and yes/no questions go up. Who's heard that before in there? I'm sure you've heard that, Attilio, in your, the intonation of WH questions goes down, and the intonation of yes/no questions goes up. Well, it turns out, of course, that that's not true necessarily. A WH question can go up or down. It depends on the pragmatics. So if A says, I can't find my book, B says, what's it called? Okay. B could also say, what's it called? And what's the difference? Okay. The difference is choice of a falling tone. I don't know what book you're talking about. Tell me the title. What's it called? Okay. If I use a rising tone in the WH question, what's it called? It glosses more like, I think I know what book you're looking for. Tell me the title. Okay. So in other words, it has nothing to do with the syntax. It has to do with the pragmatics. And it's same with yes/no questions as well. So all these are issues of phonology, the ways in which we structure information. I think that's all I wanted to go. Yeah, okay. So then what I said at the end of the lecture on 7 was language expresses information structure in a variety of ways that vary depending upon whether we're looking at written or spoken language. And this is often what we call tacit knowledge. Does anyone remember what tacit means? Diego's trying. You heard that word before. Tacit just means underlying. We can't consciously retrieve it very well, but it's information that we know. And it can come from, in the case of language, it comes, if you're a native speaker, it comes from the fact that you've been using your native language in a native language environment since you were, and you've been hearing it since before you were born. So a lot of people suggest that things like prominence, stress structure, babies hear this in utero, fetuses hear this in utero. So by the time they come out, they already have a sense of the difference between how English sounds versus other. They've done experiments where they have babies suck on bottles, and if they hear their own language, the babies suck harder and faster, and if they hear somebody else's language, they suck less. So we know that pre-speech, children already have a sense of, now this is what we mean by tacit knowledge. It's not anything you can easily retrieve. Like me saying, how much money, I need money, how much money, is not something you can easily retrieve and say, oh, the reason she shifted the stress from here to here, it just comes out naturally. That's just the way that you speak. So because it's tacit, we often don't know that there are a set of conventions that underlie it, which there are. And when we're teaching this tacit knowledge, we need to make it explicit so that ESL, EFL writers and speakers understand what they're trying to achieve, okay? And this is more likely to be successful with language analysis, not lecture instruction. In other words, it's more likely that we can teach our students by getting them to look at how the language is working rather than giving them a set of rules, okay? That we explicitly give them a set of rules and then say, now you can go home, okay? So what we're going to do now is practice what I mean by language analysis and prominence and phonology as opposed to lecture instruction, okay? So you guys at home, we're about to do the activity in class, and you will find the activity in the doc share. It's called PSLLT Teaching Tip, okay, or Teaching Activity Tip or something like that. So we're going to work through it in class, and you can work through it simultaneously with us, okay? So what you want to do now, obviously, is pause the video, go download it. Felicia, Attilio, can you download it? You have it already, Felicia?
Yes.
You have it? Sweet. Okay. So don't look through it. Don't just look at the front page. Okay, everybody that's looking at it online, because the answers are in there. So I only need, you can only look at the very front page, all right? Just to make sure that we all start in the same place. So don't turn over the pages, everybody that's in here. Just look at the front page. Okay. Diego, oh shoot, again, hold on. Yeah, right. Diego and Naomi, you're going to work together, and you three are going to work together, okay? So you just should be looking at the moment at the front page of the activity. This is an activity that comes out of the book that's coming out next year with Michigan, University of Michigan Press, that I wrote on discourse intonation. That means that you can't cite or reproduce any of these materials. You can totally use them in the classroom, but you can't reproduce them because they're actually University of Michigan's copyright at this point. And what I'm doing in this book is trying to help teachers understand how they can teach intonation in the classroom, because a lot of the information that they've been given up until now is either incorrect, which is something like all WH questions go down and all yes/no questions go up, or it's too complicated to understand very easily in terms of conventions. So let's just have a look at the first page. 2 principles regarding the intonation system in English underlie this teaching tip. Intonation is best understood as probabilistic but not deterministic, okay? We can predict what is likely, we can predict even more what is unlikely to happen, but we can't predict it in absolute terms. And we can't, because we each get to make that choice. Okay, we each get to make a choice about what it is that we mean, right? So as we saw in the previous exercise, I can say, what is it called? Or what is it called? So I can't predict whether you're going to use a falling or a rising tone. Only you can, because you know exactly what the pragmatic thing is behind it. What we do know is that there'll be either a falling or a rising tone there. It wouldn't be, what's it called? Right, that would be incredibly weird, okay? So the second thing is the system is easy to understand if you look at it through discourse rather through isolated and partial utterances. Now, the what's it called was an isolated utterance, and that was just an example. But generally speaking, when you're working with your students, if you do a bit of language analysis, the best thing to do is give them a little bit of context. And that context does not have to be long. The first activity that you're going to do together, it's a very short paragraph, but it's a contextualized paragraph, okay? So what we're going to do is 2 exercises. The first one that you're going to do, and we're going to do that, you're just going to do number 1 for the moment, exercise number 1. You're going to, with the person opposite next to you, and those of you at home with yourself, read the text and predict where you think the unit boundaries are going to appear. I think about it in terms of where you might pause, all right? So as you read the text, decide where you're going to put those unit boundaries, okay? Go ahead and do it together. Diego, you can do it. Naomi, you three can do it together, okay? Don't overthink it, just literally where you think you might pause and there's a boundary, okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, don't worry if you're not quite finished. How was that? Where's your first boundary, Diego?
After airport.
After airport, where's yours?
After.
After airport.
Last time.
No, they did after last time. Last time I was at an airport, whereas you did last time I was at an airport. Okay, now, turn over just one page. Just one page, okay. Here's the answers that you're looking at. One possible division of the text. Last time I was at an airport, or last time I was at an airport, I was between planes. I had to make an important phone call. I looked round and all the phones were busy. So I waited in line and waited and waited. Finally, I began to listen to the conversation of the guy who was talking on the phone I was waiting to use. Okay? Now, here's another one. Last time I was at the airport, I was between planes and I had to make an important phone call. I looked around and all the phones were busy. So I waited in line and waited and waited. Finally, I began to listen to the conversation of the guy who was talking on the phone I was waiting to use. To me, that's more like millennial talk. It's like, straight through. Last time I was at an airport, I was between planes and had to make an important phone call. Okay. The point is that both of them, and also the ones that you had, are good, right? There's a convention, but there's no absolute rule. I can guarantee that none of you put last time I, slash, was at, and, slash, right? So there are certain conventions that we follow, syntactic, but there's not only one way, okay? There's more than one way. So somehow we have to communicate this to our students, right? That doesn't mean that intonation is impossible to learn. It just means that the conventions themselves are what you're learning, not absolute rules, okay? All right, let's go, and there's an explanation there. In the first version, complex clauses are divided into separate units. Individual clauses are separated. Adjunct, finally, is separated. In the second version, there are far fewer unit boundaries. Syntactic units are much larger, but each unit still continues to make semantic sense, okay? And then it gives you an idea of the conventions that we use on creating units. We tend to use syntactic chunks, one idea, one piece of information, and so on. But again, none of this is set in stone, okay? What we can do is say, this is not going to happen. But there are a whole variety of ways in which it can happen, okay? All right, let's do exercise number 2. Go back to your first page. Go back to your first page. And this exercise 2, what you're going to do is highlight prominent information using prominence. So this is actually a lecture. A lecturer is saying this in the Michigan corpus. And what I want you to do is mark where you think the prominent syllables are, okay, in each unit. There's not a specific amount, just mark where you think. By prominent, I mean this idea of, I want some money. How much money? Where do you think the prominent stresses will appear in these units, okay? Just have a go at it. And again, you can help it do it together if you can. Okay. Again, don't worry if you haven't quite finished. You can have a look at the, let's just look together some of the things that you did. What did you have? Felicia, what did you mark as prominent in number 1 in the first unit?
Do.
Do? What I want to do today, okay? What about you guys?
Today, but we can stretch wherever we want depending on our student. We want to emphasize today, like today, not tomorrow. Or what we're gonna do? Okay.
Yeah. What am I gonna do today, or what am I gonna do today? No, what I want to do today. What did you guys do? Well, now you see that's interesting because I would say that's not likely. And it didn't happen. And why is it not likely? Think about this. What I want to do today, this is a lecturer talking in front of a bunch of students.
It sounds who else?
Yeah, it sounds wrong, right? It sounds like, it's all about me. What I want to do. So screw all y'all. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. So it's extremely unlikely that you would have I. And that's literally because in this particular circumstance, it makes the teacher sound kind of like not very nice, right? So, but sure, it could be either do or it could be today. It could be what. Okay, Attilio, what did you get for number 2?
I underlined overview of women, and work.
Yeah.
Just the overview, women, and work, the first 2 syllables of each.
Is that the same? Did you guys get the same?
Yeah, we talked about all 3.
Yeah, right, that's what he said. Overview, women, work. Okay, so now what I want you to do is flip to the 3rd page and you will see exactly what this guy emphasized. So this is a lecture that was, that you can hear from the My Case corpus. And this is what he actually says inside the lecture. What I want to do today is give you an overview of women and work. What I will be emphasizing is how cultural notions of womanhood determine women's work experience, okay? How's that? So did you have roughly the same? Yeah.
I missed
Now-
the determined part though. I didn't have
You missed
determined.
the well, and the truth is, Felicia, you don't have to. Like he could have said, how is cultural notions of womanhood determine women's work experience? I mean, he didn't. Yeah, the point is that he was unlikely to stress women again, because he already did that once, right? Determine woman's work experience would be weird after already saying I'm going to give you an overview of women and work. Because now it's old information, right? In neither case does he emphasize I, right? Again, for that reason. It's not all about me, right? It's all about you, okay? So in other words, there are certain conventions that will be followed when it comes to choosing provenance, but there's also more than one way of doing it, right? He could have said, what I want to do today. As it is, he chose to emphasize today instead of do. What he never would do, probably, is emphasize either I or wanna, okay? Because both of those would be really strange things to emphasize. So again, it's more like you can tell what you shouldn't do, but there are more than one way of doing what you can do, okay? So again, the explanation here is speaker's choice of prominence derives from information structure. The more important information a given unit contains, for example, Attilio's number 2, overview, women and work, that's got a lot of information, so it's got 3 prominences in it. The more prominences are likely to be present. In contrast, many function words, low-level content words, gonna, wanna, repetition items like women, can be anticipated by the hearer. Thus, they are less likely to be emphasized. And in fact, it can sound very strange if you do keep emphasizing it, okay? A useful starting place is to think of the typical structure of a unit, tone unit in English, as comprising 3 to 7 words and containing 1 to 2 prominences. That's a sort of general idea of how we put our units together. And the notion of important information depends on the specific context in which the unit appears, okay? But in general, it means considered important from the perspective of the speaker, okay? So information that the speaker believes the hearer will need in order to understand the meaning and the intention, okay? So hence the stress is on I want to give you an overview of women and work. The speaker wants the students to be absolutely clear what it is they're going to be doing, Yes.
Is this particular to English?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. Now, other languages can do similar things. Other Romance languages, some do, some don't. French has an almost exclusive push to the end of a sentence for its focal point, whereas we don't always. Some varieties of English, Indian English, for example, doesn't do this at all. They don't do it at all. They don't have a contrastive stress pattern, which is one of the reasons why when American speakers of English and Indian English speakers of English talk to each other, things can often go.
Is it difficult for Indian speakers of English to understand American English?
Not as difficult as it is for Americans to understand Indian English speakers. For two reasons primarily. One is, if you live anywhere in the world, you watch American movies. And if you're an Indian English speaker, you watch the movies in English. Okay? So they're way more, whereas, I mean, a few of us watch Bollywood movies, right? But anyway, that's just a bunch of singing and then some subtitles, right? So that's not going to familiarize us with Indian English. And the second one is that the conventions of Indian English are very different from what we call inner circle Englishes. So inner circle Englishes do this. So the reason that you and I can do this together is because this is exactly what we would do in British English. It's what we would do in American English. It's what we would do in Australian English. Those conventions are very, very similar. Okay? But as soon as you move to what we call outer circle varieties of English, Indian English, Singaporean English, Hong Kong English, this is all changes. Okay? It's all different. And some things are recognizable and some things aren't. But we think, because we're all speaking English, we're going to be fine. And because these are tacit, we don't understand what's happening. All we understand is that this is not going well. And usually we blame a speaker for that. It's usually not us. It's usually the other speaker, right? We're always like, well, what's your problem? How come you can't speak properly? So, but what it comes down to is phonology and syntactic conventions like these. So this exercise, you can see, is designed to have the students do the work themselves and come up with an understanding of what's going on, make them realize that even if you can't say exactly what is going to happen, you can certainly make very good guesses about what isn't going to happen, and that all follows a certain scheme. So did you like the exercises?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what we mean by language analysis. So I could have just written all this up for you as one long lecture, right? But I think it's way more important for our students that they play with it, so they can see what's going on. Yeah. Any questions or comments about that little lot? Because we're now done with, or actually any questions that have come from you guys watching Lecture 7, which I just briefly, if there's anything there, just now's the time to ask as well.
As a non-native speaker, if you want to teach English,
Yeah.
so in most cases, or there's some cases, for example, I myself may not know the pattern, the
Right.
common and stuff. So how can I help my students in this case?
Yeah, so the great thing about, for example, these exercises is, well, certainly exercise number 2 comes out of the My Case corpus. Now, did I talk about this before? It's the Michigan Spoken Language Corpus? No. Okay, so it's on, I think it's on your sheet. Yeah. So if under exercise 2, can you see where it says My Case in capital letters? MICASE.
All right.
So that stands for the Michigan Corpus of Academic Spoken English. It's a completely free corpus with attached sound files as well. It's all been transcribed for you, millions of words have all been transcribed, and you can't get sound files for all of them, but you can get sound files for a lot of them. And then literally you can do exactly this. You can take out material like this, which is 100% authentic teaching discourse, use the sound files to help you work out this, and then use that with your students, and that will help you, And then you know enough, Jade, to be able to say, if your student says to you, well, why don't I put it on wanna? You know enough to answer that, right? Or why don't I put it on I? Your English is good enough that you understand why that is, But if you don't want to make a guess as to where they go, then you want to use this kind of authentic material. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
And as of next year, you can use my book. Yeah. Any other questions or comments about 7 or about that? We're okay? All right, good. Okay, so that's done that. So now we've only got these 3 middle ones to go.